Hello, I'm Scott Fraser. I'm the city's floodplain administrator. And joining me today are Rich Havla and Steve Russ from FIRM, Fair Insurance Rates for in Monroe. And we've been working together for the past couple of years because FEMA has proposed new flood maps for our community. The city and FIRM have been analyzing FEMA's mapping methods to analyze what cities' options might be to mount an appeal. And the 90-day appeal period begins this Friday, March 19th. We're ready. FIRM is ready. The engineering consultants are ready, and we'll be submitting early. This is going to be a brief overview of the appeal that we've prepared so far. This is going to be a very interactive presentation. It's not a PowerPoint. It's going to look like one, but it's going to be interactive in that we're going to be dealing with live maps and panning and zooming and looking at special areas. And at the end, we're going to give you links that you can go to and do the same on your own and look at any areas of particular interest of your own. We have found that when you're using this interactive map, it usually works best with the Firefox browser. And it'll be available on both the city and FIRM's websites. We'll show you that at the end.
Scott, I might also add, it works pretty well with Edge on the Windows 10 application.
Okay, so Edge works as well. So here we go. Here's our first map. Now what you're going to see, this is just an instructional map. We're going to get further into the details here, but you're going to see a swipe bar here. And you're going to be able to grab that, move that left and right, and you'll see the colors of the buildings change in the background. And look at the top of the screen here, you see the left side is the FEMA map. So that's the left side of this bar is the impact of what FEMA's flood maps would have upon our city, broken down by each building and then color coded. And those color codings can be found down in the legend. And what you're seeing here is the bright yellow is FEMA suggesting a 1 foot increase. The orange is a 2 foot increase, red 3 foot, etc. And in some cases it's going, FEMA has recommended that it be decreased. And then in the middle, you see that no change, that gray area, and that's that FEMA or FIRM are proposing that this not be changed, the flood level not be changed for these particular buildings. Now, this is in comparison to the current flood maps. So it's on the left side, comparison of FEMA's proposed new flood maps and its increase on the current flood maps, or on the right side, when you pull it over, it's the FIRM and cities proposed flood maps and the impact. And you'll see in a second how this can change. Now, this is interactive. Like I said, you can go back and forth. You can zoom down in here. You can move around and still use the swipe bar. So you're going to go to any areas of particular interest and be able to examine it closer. Let's start on the far edge of the island, out on Stock Island here. North Stock Island is within the city, the south side is in the county. So we're only concerned with the north side. And again, here we see FEMA's impacts against the current flood maps. So if the FEMA maps were adopted the way they're proposing, we would see these bright yellow buildings would be increased 1 foot, these orange buildings 2 foot. And when we zoom in a little bit and we look out at the golf course homes out there, we see a nested series of 1 foot increases surrounded by 2 foot increases. And that's the FEMA side of the map. Now we drag this over and look at what the city and FIRM have put together, thinking that it can have for basis of an appeal. And look what happens. Look at all those buildings disappear and turn gray. And that's because while FEMA is suggesting that those buildings should incur a 1 to 2 foot increase, our analysts have figured out that no, really, there shouldn't be any change between those buildings and the current 2005 flood maps. Now, if you see these other buildings, they change color too. Look at the sheriff's office right up in here. Well, there's a decrease there, but the decrease isn't so great under our proposed maps. Okay? And that's just what it looks like over on Stock Island. And here's the legend over here. Again, it shows you yellow is plus 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, etc. Now we move over to Newtown. Again, look at these changes. You see a lot of the bright yellows down in this area just turn to gray. Again, showing that FEMA is suggesting this should have a 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot increase. Yet after our analysts have been studying this, we're figuring out, no, our appeal should suggest that none of these gray ones should change. And these ones that were 2 foot increases should be 1 foot. And these what were 3 foot increases should be only 2 foot. Now let's take a closer look down the Flagler Ave, Sunrise, Riviera areas, because this area is pretty significant. See all these increases that FEMA is suggesting. And then here's part of what our appeal would include. That's a pretty significant change down in there. Oh, look at the Midtown section. There we go. FEMA's increases. Again, here's our legend right here, 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot. And notice down in here, we see the first inclination of some 4 foot increases down around where Duncan Auto Center used to be, and HOB School, and over in the Meadows. And you can move this too. And you can see where those 4 foot increases expand like into the Meadows and Perry Court. And again, we use our swipe bar to say, okay, well, if FEMA's proposing that, what would our appeal propose? And again, we see a number of buildings going, yeah, no, we don't think those should change. So those are going to turn gray. And those 2 foot, 3 foots are going to be reduced by a foot. And then we get into that 4 foot area and look at that, they go from 4 foot to 3 foot. So basically, at least a 1 foot reduction in this broad area of Midtown, Newtown, and up on Stock Island. Now the X zone. In FEMA's proposed maps, these blue buildings represent buildings that are currently in the X zone, which is an unregulated portion of the flood zone where flood insurance is not required and building codes aren't that stringent when it comes to floodplain compliance. There's only some minor regulations. But these buildings that we've marked in blue, there's about 2,000 of them that FEMA is suggesting should be moved out of the X zone and into a regular floodplain with insurance policy requirements for flood protection and enhanced construction requirements. So we look at what our analysts have analyzed and come up with a difference here. It's more of a subtle change. The greatest change seems to be down around this area here, part of the X zone. FEMA is suggesting all these buildings should be moved in the X zone. Our analysts are saying not all of those buildings. All these gray ones should actually remain in the X zone, and that would be part of our appeal. See? And then you see also these red 3 foot increases here, reduced to 2 foot, and the 2 foot's reduced to 1 foot. And we can go out and take a wider view of this. And see what the impact is upon Old Town. Now look at the Meadows up there. They all get reduced by 1 foot. And throughout downtown, and you have another pocket where our appeal is suggesting that a number of homes in here should remain in the X zone. Again, that's FEMA saying these blue ones should go into a floodplain and be removed from the X zone, and our analysis is showing no, not all of those. These gray ones should not move accordingly. So we've kind of figured that of the 2,000 homes that FEMA is suggesting should move into a floodplain and out of the X zone, our analysts have figured there's probably about 250 that should not move. Now, this is a new type of X zone, or a new type of flood zone, I should say. This is what's known as a coastal A zone. And a coastal A zone supposedly is not going to have any effect on insurance, but the guys from Fema will talk about that in a minute. But this coastal X zone, as it comes inland here over by Perry Court and down here around the historic seaport, comes inland a bit, this would change construction requirements and floodplain requirements. So a building being constructed or being elevated would, in many instances, have to be a foot higher if it were on the seaward side of this line than it were if it were in here. And there's other restrictions, like you could not flood-proof a commercial building if it were on this seaward side of the line versus back in here. So we can zoom in and see what effect this would have. So this is FEMA's proposed coastal A zone line. And then this is what our analysis has come up with for the appeal. And look how drastically that changes for that small area. So you see FEMA's proposal, all these buildings, even the ones it barely touches, would be included in the coastal A zone. And yet our consultants say, no, that should be much closer to the shoreline, keeping all these buildings back in here into the outside the coastal A zone, the regular AE type flood zone. And this is the most demonstrative change for coastal A zones within the city. There are a couple of other impacts, but they're not so significant, and you can zoom out and check them out for yourself. In the county, in some of those keys, this is a major issue, not so much in the Keys. I mean, in Key West. Now, here's an important map, and this legend is different than the previous maps that we've shown you. This is a different kind of comparison. This is the difference between what FEMA is proposing for a flood level impact and what our firm consultants are suggesting should change. So if we take FEMA's flood maps, and let's say they say, well, this building should have a 3-foot increase, and then our consultants are saying, no, it should only be a 2-foot increase, the difference is 1 foot. So that gives us a broader view to examine throughout the city. And what we see here are the impacts we saw. These are reductions. So it's a -1 foot reduction is those bright yellow. And again, we look over here at the legend. The 2-foot reductions are orange. Remember when we focused in on Riviera and Sunrise, and we saw that those buildings all changed. So here's what it looks like in the overall difference is all these yellow buildings would have a flood level reduction of 1 foot if FEMA agreed with our maps rather than their own. And then these orange buildings would have a reduction of 2 feet. So you see these largely 1 foot reductions and these pockets of 2-foot reductions as we zoom in certain areas. And we get closer to Old Town and we get into the X zone. And here we see those 250 odd buildings, these blue ones here that we're saying should remain in the X zone. So that's the difference. Again, FEMA's saying that these should be moved out of the X zone, and we're saying, no, they shouldn't. They should remain in the X zone. And this is the most important map because this shows us the basis of the appeal and what the results would be if FEMA agreed with our appeal. Now we'll get into the finances and what the financial impact is of this. And for that, I'll turn it over to Rich.
Thanks, Scott. My name's Rich Halava. I've been on the firm board for 3 years, and I've had the opportunity to work along with Scott and Steve Ross and Caroline Horn and others from firm over the last really year and a half on the FEMA flood map project. I just wanted to reinforce Scott's point. I think we're very well positioned to submit an appeal to the proposed FEMA maps. That is scientifically based because of the work that we've done with our consultants at Woods Hole and Ransom. They've done a very, very nice job for us. As you can see on this slide, when you compare the proposed FEMA map to the map that Woods Hole has come up with that we're calling the city firm map, the difference, the estimated difference in insurance rates is just under $5.7 million. So very, very substantial, and certainly would tell us that moving forward with an appeal would make a lot of sense. You know, there's one other point that we wanted to bring up to you, and a separate action, a separate initiative by FEMA. They've announced that they will be moving forward this year with a complete overhaul of their flood insurance risk rating system, Risk 2.0. This change will again impact flood insurance rates in the county. We don't have a lot of details on this at this point in time, but as that information becomes available, obviously we'll share it as soon as we possibly can. But again, to the flood maps, just under a $5.7 million difference between the two maps from an insurance rate standpoint. So we feel it certainly makes a lot of sense to move forward with an appeal. Scott, anything else from your end?
Well, you made a good point, Rich, and that was that the appeal is scientifically based with a lot of engineering data. And that's key to an appeal. A lot of people will say, well, gee, my home never flooded during Wilma or something like that. That doesn't mount to an appeal. It isn't going to get you anywhere with FEMA. Mounting an appeal really takes some engineering, looking specifically at your property. If you're looking at this interactive map that we've got and your house is included in that, you're basically covered in our appeal for what we think is applicable on a community-wide standard. So you're going to be part of the appeal by default. If you have a particular interest in an appeal and you think that you could make a scientifically based argument that the flood zone should be different where you are, you're welcome to do that. And we have some information on our website saying how you can contact the engineers and consultants to engage them privately. The comment and appeal period begins March 19th of this year, 2021, and it'll be open for 90 days. 90 days exactly. You could have the best of appeals in the world, but if it arrives at FEMA on the 91st day, they're not going to include it or consider it anything more than a comment. If you look on the screen here, this is on our website, and this is how you submit a comment or an appeal. And a comment is generally considered something related to the mapping, like the road names or place names are different, or any other comments that you want to make that you'd like FEMA to consider. If you go to the city's website, which I've got here on the left side of your screen, there's the website, and there's a little hint. If you put /flood in it, takes you past a bunch of preliminary pages and straight to the flood portion of the website. And then here's a little path to get you to the comment page. Just go to the flood maps, new flood maps, public comment, and you'll see a screen that looks like this. And then you'll be able to go forward and register your comments or the fact that you've got an appeal coming. That's basically it, guys, unless you've got something else to add.
Yeah, Scott, this is Steve Russ. Let me just maybe add 2 points. The basis for a successful appeal is that you, in your appeal, not only project sound science, but hopefully better science than FEMA used in developing their maps. FEMA's study was a study that incorporated Palm Beach, Broward, Miami-Dade, and Monroe counties in one large area study. And the result of that was that Monroe County was bunched in with counties whose geography is different. And secondly, the focus of the storms that were used to develop the study, that center was basically off of Miami somewhere. And so it was a significant distance away, for example, from Key West. One of the things we've done is we focused the study to just Monroe County and moved the storm selection so it's more pertinent to Monroe County and to Key West. And that has reduced uncertainty and provided a better storm selection. In addition, we added an analysis of Irma, which was not included by FEMA in their analysis. And so that's better and more current information. So we have high hopes that this appeal will be accepted based on the knowledge and skill and science that's included in it. Second, we were talking about risk rating 2.0, and risk rating 2.0, while we don't have insurance rates yet, FEMA has indicated that it will be based on a property's elevation relative to base flood levels, proximity to the ocean, construction characteristics, and value. So many of those things are going to be a negative impactor for us and probably tend to increase the rates. But to the extent that this appeal lowers the base flood elevation, it can only help and probably will end up valuing the appeal to a greater dollar amount than it would have been before risk rating 2.0. Thank you for the time, Scott.
Okay, so we're not done. I mean, the analysis is done, the appeal is ready, we're prepared for that, but now we've got to fight for the appeal. And we've got to stand by and get the crumbs of information we get about risk 2.0 and figure out how the two come together, if they do at all. I neglected to put on this last screen the contact information for both myself and the folks at Firm, so I'll add that to this before it gets republished. Other than that, I think we're good, guys.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.